My name is Brooks Carven, and I'm a civil engineer who thought he knew his wife. Turns out I didn't know anything at all. The evening started like any other date night at Meridian's, the upscale restaurant where Seren insisted we celebrate our anniversary. She wore her favorite black dress, the one that cost more than most people's rent, and that practiced smile she reserved for public appearances. "This place better have improved since last time," Seren muttered, scanning the dining room with obvious disdain. The service was absolutely terrible. I should have paid attention to that comment. Should have wondered when exactly she'd been here before without me. But I was too busy trying to salvage what felt like the 100th awkward dinner in recent months. Our waitress approached, a woman in her late 20s with tired eyes but a genuine smile. Her name tag read, Sophie. She moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd been doing this job long enough to read people instantly. "Good evening, folks. Can I start you with something to drink?" Seren barely looked up from her phone. "Water, no ice, and make sure the glass is actually clean this time." Sophie's smile flickered, but held. "Of course. And for you, sir?" "Beer, whatever you have on tap is fine," I said, offering an apologetic look. As Sophie walked away, Seren launched into her usual commentary. "Did you see her nails? Completely unprofessional. And that uniform looks like it hasn't been washed in weeks. Honestly, Brooks, places like this need to maintain standards." "She seems nice enough," I replied, already feeling the familiar weight of another evening spent managing Seren's mood. "Nice?" Seren's voice rose slightly. "Brooks, we're paying premium prices here. I expect service from people who actually belong in an establishment like this, not some working-class girl who probably didn't even finish high school." The words hit me wrong. Maybe it was the casual cruelty in her tone, or maybe I'd finally reached my limit with her constant need to put other people down. "That's pretty harsh, don't you think?" Seren's eyes narrowed. "Harsh? I'm being realistic. Some people are cut out for better things and some aren't. It's not my fault if the truth hurts." When Sophie returned with our drinks, Seren was ready. "Excuse me, but I ordered water with no ice. This clearly has ice in it. Can you manage to get that right? Or should I speak to your manager?" Sophie maintained her composure beautifully. "I apologize for the mistake. Let me get you a fresh glass right away. And while you're at it," Seren continued, "maybe you could wipe down this table properly. I can see fingerprints all over it." I watched Sophie's face carefully. She was handling this with more grace than Seren deserved, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Seren, that's enough," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" My wife's voice carried across nearby tables. "Are you seriously taking her side right now?" "I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm asking you to treat people with basic respect." Seren's laugh was sharp and ugly. "Basic respect? Brooks, I'm a paying customer. I have every right to expect competent service. If she can't handle simple requests, maybe she should find work more suited to her background." That last word dripped with enough venom to make my stomach turn. I looked at Sophie, who was standing perfectly still, clearly trying to decide whether to walk away or defend herself. "You know what?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. "You're being completely out of line." Seren's face flushed red. "Out of line? Are you insane? This is our anniversary dinner, Brooks, and you're defending some random waitress over your own wife?" The restaurant had gone noticeably quieter. Other diners were trying to pretend they weren't listening, but I could feel their attention like a spotlight. "I'm defending basic human decency," I replied. "Something you seem to have forgotten." Seren stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "You chose a waitress over your own girlfriend. Are you crazy? I cannot believe you're doing this to me in public. This is humiliating." "Then maybe you should think about how your behavior reflects on both of us." "My behavior?" Seren's voice reached a pitch that made nearby diners openly stare. You just disrespected me in front of strangers, and you want to talk about my behavior? I looked at Sophie, who was watching this unfold with the careful neutrality of someone who'd probably seen plenty of relationship drama play out in her section. Then I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw someone I barely recognized anymore. You're right, I said, standing up. I am choosing her over you. At least she's treating people with dignity. Serene's mouth fell open. For a moment, she seemed genuinely shocked that I'd called her bluff. Then the shock transformed into fury. Fine, she hissed. If that's how you want to play this, then you can finish dinner alone. Don't bother coming home tonight. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit, heels clicking against the hardwood floor like gunshots. I watched her go, feeling something that might have been relief. Sophie approached cautiously. Sir, I'm really sorry about— Don't apologize, I interrupted. You handled that better than she deserved. Actually, could I ask you for a favor? I'd like to move to a different table and start over if that's possible. A small smile played at the corners of Sophie's mouth. Of course. Let me grab some fresh menus. As she led me to a quieter booth in the corner, I felt like I was seeing the restaurant clearly for the first time, the warm lighting, the gentle murmur of conversation, the smell of good food. It was actually a nice place. Without Seren's constant criticism poisoning the atmosphere, I could appreciate it. Sophie returned with menus and a fresh beer. Better? Much better. Thank you for being so professional back there. I know that couldn't have been easy. She shrugged. Part of the job, unfortunately. Though I have to say, most people don't stand up to their dates like that. Yeah, well, maybe I should have done it sooner. Sophie hesitated, then glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Can I tell you something? Your girlfriend comes here with different men all the time. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my beer carefully, trying to process what she'd just said. What do you mean? I probably shouldn't have said anything, but— Sophie looked genuinely conflicted. She's been here at least 6 times in the past 2 months, always with someone different, always uses different names for the reservations. My mind raced. 6 times in 2 months? Seren had told me she was working late most of those nights, or out with her girlfriends. Are you sure it was her? Positive. Hard to forget someone who treats the staff like that. Plus, she always orders the same thing. Salmon with no seasoning, water with no ice. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Would it be possible to see the reservation logs? Just the ones tied to her phone number? Sophie bit her lip. I'd have to ask my manager. That's not really something I can— Please, I need to know. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Let me go talk to Celia. She's been here forever, and she doesn't like it when people abuse the staff. While Sophie was gone, I sat in the quiet booth trying to make sense of what I'd just learned. 6 different men in 2 months, different names, the casual way she'd criticized the service, like she was intimately familiar with this place. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I swallowed without question? Sophie returned with an older woman who had the bearing of someone who'd been managing restaurants since before I was born. Her name tag read Celia, and she looked at me with the kind of direct assessment that made me straighten my shoulders. Sophie tells me you'd like to see some reservation information, Celia said without preamble. My wife has been coming here without me. I'd like to know how often. Celia nodded slowly. I remember her. Not the kind of customer we enjoy serving, if I'm being honest. Sophie, go get the reservation printouts for the last 3 months. Include the security timestamps. Security timestamps? We keep camera records of the dining room for insurance purposes. If someone's been using multiple names, we can match the reservations to the actual footage. Celia's expression was grim. I've seen this before. Usually doesn't end well for the spouse who's been kept in the dark. Sophie returned with a stack of papers. Here's everything tied to that phone number. 7 reservations total, 5 different names. 7 reservations. 5 different names. I stared at the papers, seeing Seren's phone number repeated over and over next to names I didn't recognize. Jennifer Walsh, Lisa Martinez, Amanda Chen, names she'd apparently made up for her secret dinners. Could I get copies of these? Already made them, Celia said, handing me a folder. Along with the corresponding security timestamps. Whatever you're dealing with, you deserve to know the truth. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of each page, then uploaded them to a cloud storage account Seren didn't know about. My hands were shaking slightly, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. Thank you both. I know this isn't standard procedure. Sophie shook her head. After the way she treated us tonight, and finding out she's been lying to you this whole time, I'd say you're entitled to some answers. I was about to respond when I saw Seren storming back through the front door, her face flushed with anger. She'd apparently decided that leaving dramatically wasn't enough. She wanted round 2. "Brooks!" she called across the restaurant. "We need to talk! Now!" Every head in the place turned toward us. Celia muttered something under her breath that sounded distinctly unflattering. "Actually," I said, loud enough for Seren to hear, "I think I'm good right here." Seren marched over to our table, her heels clicking like a countdown timer. "You cannot be serious right now. You're going to sit here with these people instead of working this out with your wife? These people have been more honest with me in the last 20 minutes than you've been in months." "What's that supposed to mean?" I held up the folder. "It means I know about Jennifer Walsh, and Lisa Martinez, and Amanda Chen. Should I go on?" The color drained from Serene's face so fast I thought she might faint. She looked at Sophie, then at Celia, then back at me. "I don't know what they told you, but they told me the truth. 7 reservations, 5 fake names, 6 different men, all in the last 3 months. That's—" Serene's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "That's completely ridiculous. Why would you believe them over me?" "Because they have security footage." The silence that followed was deafening. Seren stood frozen, clearly trying to calculate her next move. Around us, the restaurant had gone completely quiet, except for the soft jazz playing overhead. "This is insane," she finally said. "You're taking the word of some waitress over your own wife. These people are lying to break us up." "Why would they do that? They don't even know me." Because they're jealous. They see what we have, and they want to destroy it." I almost laughed. "What we have? Seren, what we have is you going on dates with other men while I work late to pay for your lifestyle. It's not what you think. Then explain it. Explain why you need 5 different fake names to eat dinner at the same restaurant." Seren glanced around desperately, as if looking for an escape route. When she realized the entire restaurant was watching our conversation, something in her expression hardened. "Fine. You want to do this here? In front of everyone? You're making a huge mistake, Brooks. These people don't care about you. They're just enjoying the drama." I looked at Sophie, who was standing quietly nearby, ready to give us space if needed. Then I looked at Celia, whose expression suggested she'd seen this exact scenario play out before. "You know what? I think I'll take my chances with them." I stood up and walked over to the hostess station. "Could I get the check, please? Just for my table." "Of course, sir." When the hostess brought the receipt, I made sure to tip generously. Then I turned to Seren, who was still standing in the middle of the dining room looking lost. "I'm going to finish my dinner now. You're welcome to leave whenever you're ready." "Brooks, please, can we just go home and talk about this privately?" "No. I think we're past the point of private conversations." I walked back to my table and sat down. Sophie approached with a fresh menu. "Would you like to order dinner, sir?" "Absolutely. What do you recommend?" As Sophie walked me through the evening specials, I was dimly aware of Seren still standing in the middle of the restaurant. Other diners had gone back to their own conversations, but I could feel their curiosity like a low hum in the background. "I'll take the ribeye, medium rare, with the roasted vegetables." "Excellent choice. And thank you, by the way, for standing up to her. Thank you for telling me the truth. After Sophie left, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Seren's parents. Her father, Richard, was a retired bank president who'd always treated me like I wasn't quite good enough for his daughter. Her mother, Patricia, was the kind of woman who measured success by the size of your house and the brand of your handbag. I opened a new group text and attached the photos of the reservation logs. Richard and Patricia, I thought you should know what your daughter has been up to lately. These are reservation records from Meridian's restaurant, showing 7 dinner dates with different men over the past 3 months, all made under fake names. I found out tonight when the staff recognized her. Thought you'd want to know the kind of person you raised. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Seren was still standing near the hostess station, apparently trying to decide whether to leave or make another scene. When her phone buzzed with the group text notification, I watched her face go from confusion to horror in real time. She looked at me across the restaurant, and I raised my beer in a mock toast. Her phone started ringing immediately, probably her parents calling for an explanation. She declined the call, then another one, then a third. Finally, she walked over to my table one last time. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "Maybe, but I doubt it. This isn't over." "Yeah, it is." She stared at me for another moment, then turned and walked out of the restaurant. This time, she didn't come back. Sophie brought my dinner a few minutes later. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, better than I have in months." "Good for you. It takes courage to stand up for what's right." As I cut into my steak, I realized she was right. For the first time in years, I'd chosen to do what felt right instead of what was easy. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have no idea what she's been up to. Want proof?" I stared at the message, my fork halfway to my mouth. Apparently, the evening's revelations were just getting started. The text came from a number I didn't recognize, but something about the timing felt deliberate. I was still sitting in Meridian's, finishing my dinner alone while processing the fact that my wife had been living a double life. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who's been watching. Meet me at Grady's Diner on 5th Street tomorrow at noon. Come alone." Grady's was a dive restaurant near the industrial district where I worked, not the kind of place Seren would ever set foot in, which made it perfect for whatever this was. I paid my check and drove home through empty streets, my mind racing. The house felt different when I walked in, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time. Everything was exactly as Seren had arranged it. Expensive furniture, designer accessories, photos of us at various social events where she looked perfect and I looked uncomfortable. How much of our life together had been performance? I spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about all the signs I'd missed. Late nights at the office, weekend trips with girlfriends I'd never met. The way she'd started treating me like an inconvenience rather than a husband. The next morning, I called my office and told them I'd be working from home. Then I drove to Grady's Diner, arriving 15 minutes early to scope out the situation. The place was exactly what you'd expect. Cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting, and coffee that could strip paint. I ordered a cup and waited. At exactly noon, a woman in her mid-30s walked in. She had short dark hair, wore a leather jacket over jeans, and moved with the confident stride of someone who'd spent time in law enforcement. She scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over. "Brooks Carven?" "That's me. Mina Torres, private investigator." She slid into the booth across from me and signaled the waitress for coffee. "I've been tracking your wife's activities for the past 6 weeks." "Tracking them for who?" "That's confidential, but my client decided you deserved to know what I've uncovered." Mina pulled a manila envelope from her jacket and set it on the table between us. "Before you open that, I need to ask, how much do you really want to know?" "Everything. Even if it's worse than you think?" I thought about Serene's performance at the restaurant, the casual cruelty in her voice when she talked about Sophie. Yeah, even then. Mina nodded and pushed the envelope toward me. Your wife has been running what I can only describe as a systematic operation. Multiple relationships, multiple identities, and a very specific endgame. I opened the envelope and found photographs, financial records, and detailed surveillance reports. The first photo showed Seren entering a downtown hotel with a man I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago, on a night she'd told me she was working late. Who's this guy? Lance Greer, real estate developer, old money family, married with 2 kids. He's been seeing your wife for about 4 months. I flipped through more photos. Seren with Lance at expensive restaurants. Seren with Lance at what looked like a private party. Seren with Lance entering an apartment building I'd never seen before. She has an apartment? Rented under the name Jennifer Walsh. Same name she used for some of those restaurant reservations. Your wife has been very busy, Brooks. The financial records were even worse. Credit card statements showing charges I'd never seen, all for places I'd never been. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, all funded by accounts I didn't know existed. Where is she getting the money for all this? Mina's expression darkened. That's where it gets really interesting. Look at the last page. I flipped to a bank statement showing regular transfers from an account in my name, an account I'd never opened. The amounts were significant. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, always timed to coincide with my paycheck deposits. She's been skimming from your direct deposits for months. Setting up duplicate accounts, forging signatures, the whole 9 yards. Your wife is running a sophisticated fraud operation, and you're the primary victim. My hands shook as I processed the scope of what Seren had been doing. This wasn't just cheating, it was systematic theft, identity fraud, and who knows what else. How is this even possible? She works in marketing for a financial services company. She has access to the tools and knowledge needed to pull this off. Plus, she's been using your personal information to open accounts without your knowledge. I thought about all the times Seren had handled our finances, insisting she was better with paperwork. All the documents she'd asked me to sign without really explaining what they were for. What's the endgame here? That's where Lance Greer comes in. He's not just her boyfriend, he's her business partner. They're planning to use your stolen money and some insider information from your engineering firm to bid on a major city development project. What kind of insider information? The kind that comes from having access to your work computer, your project files, and your client communications. Your wife has been photographing documents, copying files, building a comprehensive database of everything your firm is working on. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Seren hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been systematically dismantling my life, stealing my money, and planning to use my own work against me. Why are you telling me this? Who hired you? Mina hesitated. Someone who has a vested interest in seeing Lance Greer's plans fail. That's all I can say. What am I supposed to do with this information? That's up to you. But if I were in your position, I'd want to level the playing field. She stood up and dropped a business card on the table. Call me if you decide you want to fight back. I've got more where this came from. After Mina left, I sat in the diner for another hour, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. The photos, the financial records, the systematic theft. It painted a picture of someone I'd never really known. My phone rang. Seren's name appeared on the screen. Hello. Brooks, we need to talk. I know you're upset about last night, but you're blowing this completely out of proportion. Am I? Yes. Those restaurant reservations. I can explain everything. I've been planning a surprise for you, and I needed to keep it secret. What kind of surprise involves 5 different fake names and 6 different men? It's complicated. Can you just come home so we can discuss this privately? I looked at the photos spread across the diner table. Seren with Lance, entering hotels, laughing at expensive restaurants, living a life I'd been unknowingly funding. No, I don't think so. Brooks, please. I know how this looks, but how it looks. Seren, I know exactly what this is. The question is what I'm going to do about it. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, less pleading, more calculating. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time for me to start playing the same game you've been playing. I don't know what you think you know, but I hung up. That evening, I drove to Lance Greer's house. It was in Hillcrest, the kind of neighborhood where the houses had names instead of just addresses. Lance's place was a sprawling colonial with a circular driveway and enough landscaping to employ a small army. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:30, Lance's garage door opened and a silver Mercedes pulled out. I followed at a distance, staying far enough back to avoid detection, but close enough to see where he was going. He drove downtown to a parking garage attached to one of the newer high-rise buildings. I watched him park and head toward the elevators, then waited 5 minutes before following. The building directory showed mostly law offices and financial firms. I was studying the list when I heard familiar laughter echoing from the elevator bank. Seren and Lance emerged from one of the elevators, both dressed like they were heading to an expensive dinner. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, and jewelry that definitely hadn't come from my credit card, at least not directly. They walked past me without noticing, too absorbed in their conversation to pay attention to their surroundings. I heard Lance say something about the final transfer, and Seren laughing in response. I followed them out to the parking garage and watched them get into Lance's Mercedes. As they drove away, I noticed something interesting. Lance had left his parking space unlocked, and there was a briefcase visible in the back seat. I looked around the garage. No security cameras in this section, no other people around. It would be easy to get closer to the car, maybe see what was in that briefcase. But that would be breaking the law, crossing a line I'd never crossed before. Then I thought about the photos in Mina's envelope, the stolen money, the forged documents, the systematic way Seren had been dismantling my life while I worked late to support her lifestyle. I walked over to Lance's car. The briefcase was unlocked. Inside, I found contracts, financial projections, and a folder labeled Carven Engineering, Project Files. My project files, stolen from my computer and compiled into a comprehensive intelligence package. I took photos of everything with my phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of taking action instead of just accepting whatever happened to me. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Good work tonight. Ready for the next step? I stared at the message, realizing that someone had been watching me watch Lance and Seren. The thought should have been disturbing, but instead it felt like confirmation that I wasn't alone in this fight. I typed back, "What did you have in mind?" The response came immediately. "Time to return the favor. Meet me tomorrow night. Same place, same time." As I drove home through the empty streets, I thought about the man I'd been just 24 hours ago. Someone who avoided confrontation, who tried to keep the peace, who let his wife handle the finances because it was easier than asking difficult questions. That man was gone. In his place was someone who was ready to fight back, someone who understood that sometimes you have to be willing to play dirty to protect yourself. I just hoped I was smart enough to win. The next night at Grady's, Mina was waiting with a laptop and a grin that suggested she'd been looking forward to this conversation. "You've been busy," she said as I sat down. "Breaking into cars now?" "How did you—" "I told you I've been watching, and I have to say I'm impressed. Most people in your situation just hire lawyers and hope for the best. Most people probably don't have wives who are running elaborate fraud schemes." Mina turned her laptop around so I could see the screen. It showed a detailed floor plan of what looked like an office building. "This is Lance Greer's real estate office. Top floor of the Meridian building downtown. He keeps hard copies of all his important documents in a safe behind his desk. Okay. And tomorrow night he's hosting a charity gala at the country club. His office will be empty for at least 4 hours. I stared at the floor plan, understanding what she was suggesting. You want me to break into his office. I want you to retrieve your stolen property. There's a difference. Not legally, there isn't. Mina shrugged. Sometimes legal and right aren't the same thing. But it's your choice. I thought about the briefcase full of stolen files, about Seren's systematic theft of our money, about the casual way she'd humiliated Sophie at the restaurant. What exactly are you proposing? Simple retrieval operation. I've got the building layout, security schedules, and access codes. You go in, photograph everything in Lance's safe, and get out. No theft, no vandalism, just documentation. How do you have access codes? Let's just say Lance hasn't been as careful about operational security as he thinks. Mina pulled a piece of paper from her jacket. Building maintenance schedule. The cleaning crew finishes the top floor by 9 p.m. Security guard makes his rounds every 2 hours after that. You'd have a clean window from 9:15 to 11 p.m. And if I get caught? Then you're a concerned husband who received an anonymous tip about stolen documents and decided to investigate. Not ideal, but not the end of the world either. I studied the floor plan, thinking about risk versus reward. On one hand, this was clearly illegal. On the other hand, Lance and Seren had already crossed that line when they started stealing from me. What's in it for you? Like I said, I have a client who wants to see Lance Greer fail. Helping you helps my client. And you won't tell me who that is. Correct. I made my decision. What do I need to know? The next evening, I sat in my car across from the Meridian building, watching the cleaning crew load their equipment into a van. My heart was racing, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. At 9:15 exactly, I walked into the building lobby. The security guard was reading a newspaper and barely looked up when I flashed an ID badge Mina had provided. Working late tonight, I said casually. He replied without interest. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like it took forever. When the doors opened, I stepped into a darkened hallway lined with glass-fronted offices. Lance's suite was at the end, marked with gold lettering that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The access code Mina had given me worked perfectly. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me, then used my phone's flashlight to navigate to Lance's private office. The safe was exactly where Mina had said it would be, hidden behind a painting of what looked like a hunting scene. The combination she'd provided worked on the first try. Inside, I found folders full of documents that made my stomach turn. Forged contracts with my signature, bank account information I'd never authorized, detailed plans for using my engineering firm's proprietary designs in Lance's development projects. But the worst part was a folder labeled Phase 2. It contained divorce papers already filled out in Serene's name, along with a financial settlement proposal that would leave me with essentially nothing. They weren't just stealing from me. They were planning to destroy me completely. I photographed everything, making sure to capture every detail. As I worked, I found myself getting angry in a way I'd never experienced before. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, systematic destruction of another human being. When I finished documenting the contents of the safe, I noticed something else. A bottle of expensive whiskey sitting on Lance's desk, along with 2 crystal glasses. Apparently, he and Seren had been celebrating their success in my office. I unscrewed the cap and poured the whiskey down the sink in Lance's private bathroom. Then I refilled the bottle with water from the tap and carefully screwed the cap back on. It was petty, but it felt good. As I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Seren. "Where are you? We need to talk." I looked around Lance's office, at the stolen documents, the forged contracts, the divorce papers they'd prepared without my knowledge, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I typed back, Busy tonight? Talk tomorrow. Her response came immediately. This is important. Come home now. Can't. Work emergency. Brooks, I'm serious. We need to discuss our future. I almost laughed. Our future. According to the documents I'd just photographed, our future had already been decided without my input. Instead of responding, I turned off my phone and left Lance's office exactly as I'd found it, except for the whiskey bottle full of water and the knowledge that their secrets were no longer safe. The security guard didn't even look up when I left the building. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day organizing the evidence I'd gathered. Photos from Mina's investigation, bank records showing the fraudulent transfers, and now the contents of Lance's safe. It painted a comprehensive picture of a sophisticated criminal operation. But evidence was just the beginning. If I wanted to fight back effectively, I needed to think strategically. I called Mina. I need to ask you something. Shoot. Your client, the one who wants to see Lance fail, would they be interested in seeing Seren fail too? I think that could be arranged. What do you have in mind? I want to destroy them both, completely, legally, financially, socially, the whole package. There was a pause. That's a big escalation from where you were 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I didn't know they were planning to frame me for fraud and leave me penniless. Now I do. Fair enough. What's your plan? I'm still working on that, but I know it needs to be comprehensive. They've been planning this for months. I need to be smarter and more ruthless than they are. I can help with that. My client has resources. Good, because I'm done playing defense. That afternoon, I drove to Seren's office building. I'd been there before for company parties, so I knew the layout. More importantly, I knew that Seren always worked late on Thursdays. I parked across the street and waited. At 6:30, I saw Lance's Mercedes pull into the parking garage. He was picking her up for another one of their secret dates, probably using my stolen money to pay for dinner. I waited until they left, then walked into the building. Seren's company occupied 3 floors, and her office was on the 22nd floor. I took the elevator up and walked confidently toward her section, nodding at the few people still working late. Seren's office door was closed, but not locked. Inside, I found her computer still logged in. She'd apparently left in a hurry to meet Lance. Her email account was a treasure trove of incriminating information. Messages to Lance discussing their project, communications with banks about account transfers, even a draft email to a divorce attorney outlining her strategy for maximizing settlement value. I forwarded the most damaging emails to a secure account I'd set up, then deleted them from her sent folder. If she noticed they were missing, she'd probably assume it was a technical glitch. But the real prize was in her desk drawer, a USB drive labeled BC Files. My initials. When I plugged it into her computer, I found copies of every document from my engineering firm's servers. Project plans, client lists, financial projections, everything someone would need to compete against my company or sabotage our operations. I copied the entire contents of the drive to my phone, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. As I prepared to leave, I noticed a photo on Seren's desk. One of us from our wedding day. We looked happy, or at least I looked happy. Looking at it now, I could see something calculating in Seren's smile that I'd missed at the time. I turned the photo face down and left. That evening, I met Mina at a bar near the industrial district. She was already waiting with a beer and a satisfied expression. "Productive day?" she asked. "Very. I've got enough evidence to bury them both." Evidence is good, but evidence alone won't destroy them the way you want to destroy them. What do you mean? I mean, you need to think bigger. Legal consequences are one thing, but social and professional consequences can be much more devastating. Mina pulled out her phone and showed me a video file. "This is from last night's charity gala. Lance and your wife, getting very cozy in front of some very important people." I watched Seren laughing at something Lance whispered in her ear, her hand resting on his arm in a way that left no doubt about their relationship. Who else was at this event? Everyone who matters in this city's business community, including several of your wife's clients and all of Lance's major investors. I began to see the possibilities. What would happen if this video became public? Lance would lose his investors. Your wife would lose her clients. Both of them would become social pariahs overnight. And that would be just the beginning. Exactly. Financial ruin, professional destruction, social isolation. It's all connected. You just need to know which domino to push first. I thought about the evidence I'd gathered, the systematic way Seren and Lance had planned my destruction, the casual cruelty they'd shown toward people like Sophie. I want to push all the dominoes at once, Mina grinned. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to win. The next phase required careful timing and multiple moving parts. Mina and I spent the weekend mapping out what she called synchronized destruction, hitting Seren and Lance from multiple angles simultaneously so they couldn't coordinate their response. The key, Mina explained over coffee at Grady's, is to make sure they're too busy putting out fires to mount any kind of counterattack. She'd brought a new ally, a lawyer named Jasmine Chen who specialized in financial fraud cases. Jazz was sharp-eyed and cynical, with the kind of smile that suggested she genuinely enjoyed destroying people who deserved it. "I've reviewed all the evidence you've gathered," Jazz said, spreading documents across the table. "We have them cold on multiple felonies. Identity theft, wire fraud, theft by deception, conspiracy, the works. How long would they serve? If prosecuted to the full extent, Lance is looking at 5 to 7 years. Your wife would probably get 3 to 5, assuming she cooperates. But prosecution takes time," Mina added, "and time gives them opportunities to cover their tracks or flee. Which is why we're not waiting for the legal system," I said. Jazz nodded approvingly. "Smart. Legal consequences are just one piece of the puzzle. We want to destroy their ability to function in society." We spent the next hour refining our strategy. The plan was elegant in its simplicity: expose them publicly, destroy them financially, and isolate them socially, all within a 72-hour window that would leave them no time to recover. "Phase 1 starts tomorrow," Mina said. "You ready for this?" I thought about Seren's casual cruelty toward Sophie, about the divorce papers I'd found in Lance's safe, about the systematic way they'd been planning to destroy my life. "More than ready." Monday morning I called in sick to work again and drove to Lance's office building, but this time I wasn't going inside. Instead, I parked in the visitor lot and waited for him to arrive. Lance pulled into his reserved space at exactly 8:30, driving the same Mercedes I'd followed last week. He was talking on his phone and looked relaxed, confident, a man who thought he had the world figured out. I waited until he was inside the building, then got out of my car and approached his Mercedes. The USB drive Mina had given me contained a virus that would slowly corrupt his computer files over the next few days. All I had to do was plug it into the charging port in his car and wait for it to sync with his phone. The process took less than 30 seconds. By the time Lance checked his email that evening, the virus would be spreading through his entire digital network. Phase 2 required more finesse. I drove to Seren's office and waited in the lobby until I saw her assistant leave for lunch. Then I approached the reception desk with a bouquet of flowers and a confident smile. "Delivery for Seren Dreven," I said. "She's in a meeting, but I can take them," the receptionist replied. "Actually, I need her signature. It's from her husband. Anniversary surprise." The receptionist smiled and called Seren's extension. "Your husband is here with flowers." "Okay, I'll send him up." I took the elevator to Seren's floor, carrying the flowers and a small device Mina had given me. When Seren met me at the elevator, she looked genuinely surprised. "Brooks, what are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you. Can we talk in your office?" She led me down the hallway, chatting nervously about how busy she'd been. I nodded and made appropriate responses while scanning for security cameras and noting which offices had people in them. Inside her office, I set the flowers on her desk and hugged her, partly for appearances, partly to plant the listening device Mina had given me in the collar of her jacket. "These are beautiful," Seren said, but I could hear the suspicion in her voice. "What's the occasion?" "Just wanted to remind you how much I appreciate everything you do for us." She studied my face carefully. "Is everything okay? You've been acting strange since that night at the restaurant." "Everything's fine. I've just been thinking about our relationship, about how we communicate." "Okay." She was definitely suspicious now. "Actually, I should let you get back to work. I know how important your projects are." I kissed her cheek and left, knowing that the device in her collar would record every conversation she had for the next week. Phase 3 was the most satisfying. I drove to the country club where Lance was a member and asked to speak with the membership director. Her name was Margaret, and she had the kind of refined authority that came from years of managing wealthy people's social lives. "Mr. Carven, how can I help you?" "I wanted to discuss a concern about one of your members, Lance Greer." Margaret's expression became carefully neutral. "What kind of concern?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the video Mina had taken at the charity gala. "This is from last Thursday's event. The woman he's with is my wife." Margaret watched the video without comment, but I could see her processing the implications. Country clubs took their reputations seriously, and public adultery was exactly the kind of scandal they worked hard to avoid. "I see. And you're bringing this to my attention because I thought the membership committee should be aware that Mr. Greer is using club events to conduct an affair. I understand that reflects poorly on the club's reputation." "Indeed it does." Margaret made a note in her planner. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll address it appropriately." I left the country club feeling like I'd lit a fuse that would burn slowly, but inevitably, toward Lance's social standing. That evening, I met Mina and Jazz at a restaurant across town to coordinate the final phase. "How did it go today?" Jazz asked. "All devices planted, virus uploaded, country club notified. What's next?" "Tomorrow, we go public," Mina said. "I've prepared a comprehensive media package with all the evidence we've gathered: financial fraud, adultery, theft of proprietary information. It's all documented." "Which media outlets?" "Local news, business journal, and a few social media accounts with large followings. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone in the city will know what Seren and Lance have been up to." Jazz leaned forward. "That's when things get interesting. Once the story breaks, their employers will have to respond. Lance's investors will start asking questions. Your wife's clients will want explanations. And they'll be too busy managing the crisis to coordinate their stories," I added. "Exactly. Divide and conquer." We spent another hour fine-tuning the timeline. The media package would go out at 9 a.m., time to hit during the morning news cycle. By noon, the story would be trending on local social media. By evening, both Lance and Seren would be facing professional and social consequences that would take years to recover from, if they ever could. "There's one more thing," Mina said as we prepared to leave. "My client wants to meet with you tomorrow night, after everything goes public." "Finally going to tell me who's been funding this operation?" "Tomorrow night. I think you'll find it interesting." I drove home through familiar streets that somehow looked different now. In less than 24 hours, my life would change completely. Seren and Lance would face the consequences of their actions, and I would finally have justice. But as I pulled into my driveway, I realized that justice and revenge weren't the same thing. Justice was about restoring balance, making things right. What I was planning was more personal than that. I was planning to destroy two people who had tried to destroy me, and I was looking forward to it. My phone buzzed with a text from Seren. "Thanks for the flowers today. Want to have dinner tomorrow night? I feel like we should talk." I stared at the message, thinking about what her day would look like tomorrow. By evening, her career would be in ruins, her reputation destroyed, her carefully constructed life falling apart. I typed back, "Sure, let's talk." It would be the last normal conversation we ever had. The media package went live at exactly 9 a.m. I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, watching the story spread across social media in real time. Mina had done her work well. The evidence was presented clearly, the implications were obvious, and the story was already being shared by local news outlets. My phone started buzzing with calls from reporters, colleagues, and friends who'd seen the news. I ignored them all and drove to a parking garage downtown where I could watch the chaos unfold. The first sign that our plan was working came at 9:30, when I saw Lance's Mercedes speeding through downtown traffic with obvious desperation. He was probably racing between his office, his lawyer, and his investors, trying to contain the damage. At 10:15, my phone rang. Seren's name appeared on the screen. "Brooks, where are you? I need to talk to you right now." "I'm working. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Her voice was shrill with panic. "Have you seen the news? Someone leaked a bunch of lies about me and Lance to the press." "What kind of lies?" "You know exactly what kind. This is your doing, isn't it?" I pulled into a parking space and put the phone on speaker. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. This has your fingerprints all over it. The timing, the evidence, it's all too convenient." "Seren, if someone leaked information about you and Lance, maybe the problem isn't the leak. Maybe the problem is what you and Lance have been doing." There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. "You have no idea what you've started. Lance has resources you can't imagine. If you think you can destroy us and walk away clean, you're mistaken." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You want to play games? Fine. But remember that I know all your secrets too." She hung up before I could respond. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. "Brooks Carven?" "Yes. This is Ray Mitchell. I work for Lance Greer. He'd like to meet with you to discuss a resolution to this situation." "What kind of resolution?" "The kind that keeps everyone out of court and out of prison. Mr. Greer is prepared to be very generous." I thought about the divorce papers I'd found in Lance's safe, about the systematic way they'd planned to destroy my life. "Tell Mr. Greer I'm not interested in his generosity." "I don't think you understand the situation you're in. Mr. Greer has connections throughout this city. He can make your life very difficult." "My life is already difficult. Thanks to him. Mr. Carven, I'm trying to help you here. Take the meeting. Work something out. Because if you don't, things are going to get much worse for you." There was something in Ray's tone that made me pay attention. This wasn't just a negotiation tactic, it was a genuine warning. What kind of worse? The kind that involves accidents. The kind that involves problems with your business, your reputation, your safety. Mr. Greer doesn't like being embarrassed. Now I understood. Lance wasn't just offering to buy me off, he was threatening me. "Tell Mr. Greer that if anything happens to me, all the evidence I've gathered goes directly to the FBI. And tell him that I'm not as easy to intimidate as he thinks." I hung up and immediately called Mina. "We have a problem. Lance is making threats." "What kind of threats?" "The kind that involve accidents and safety concerns. I think he's escalating beyond financial fraud." "That's actually good news." "How is that good news?" "Because it means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." Mina gave me an address in the warehouse district. "Meet me there in an hour, and Brooks, watch your back. If Lance is making threats, he might be serious about following through." I spent the next hour driving through the city, taking random turns and doubling back to make sure I wasn't being followed. The warehouse district was mostly empty during the day, which made it easy to spot any surveillance. Mina was waiting inside an abandoned building with enough surveillance equipment to outfit a small army. She wasn't alone. There were two other people with her, both wearing the kind of clothes that suggested they were comfortable with violence. Friends of yours? I asked. Security consultants. If Lance wants to play rough, we need to be prepared. One of the consultants, a woman with short gray hair and military bearing, stepped forward. I'm Sarah. I understand you've received some threats. That's right. We've been monitoring Lance's communications since this morning. He's definitely planning something, but we're not sure what yet. Sarah showed me a laptop screen displaying what looked like intercepted text messages. Lance was coordinating with several people using coded language that suggested they were planning some kind of operation. What kind of operation? Hard to say. Could be surveillance, could be intimidation, could be worse. But he's definitely mobilizing resources. Mina pulled me aside. This changes our timeline. We need to accelerate Phase 4. What's Phase 4? Complete destruction. Financial, legal, and social. We hit them so hard they don't have time to retaliate. She handed me a folder full of documents. These are federal charges we're filing this afternoon. Wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, the works. Once these are filed, Lance and Seren will be too busy dealing with federal investigators to worry about revenge. What do you need me to do? Stay alive until tomorrow night. After that, it won't matter what Lance threatens because he'll be in federal custody. I left the warehouse with a new phone, a GPS tracker, and instructions to call Sarah's team if anything seemed suspicious. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That evening, I met Seren at the restaurant she'd suggested, a place downtown that I'd never been to before. She was already waiting when I arrived, sitting at a corner table where she could see the entire room. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled. Her makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes, and her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her wine glass. You came, she said as I sat down. You said you wanted to talk. I want you to call off your dogs. My dogs. Don't play dumb, Brooks. I know you're behind all of this. The media leaks, the investigation, everything. I studied her face, looking for any sign of the woman I'd married. All I saw was someone who'd been caught and was trying to find a way out. Why would I be behind anything? According to the news reports, you and Lance have been running a fraud operation for months. I'm as surprised as anyone. Cut the act. We both know you've been gathering evidence, building a case against us. If someone has been gathering evidence against you, maybe it's because you gave them something to gather evidence about. Seren leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Lance is dangerous, Brooks. More dangerous than you realize. If you keep pushing this, people are going to get hurt. Is that another threat? It's a warning. Lance has connections to people who solve problems permanently. If he decides you're too much of a threat... She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. So what are you suggesting? Drop the investigation. Withdraw the media attention. Let us disappear quietly, and everyone walks away intact. I pretended to consider her offer while actually studying the restaurant layout. 2 men at the bar had been watching our table since I arrived. Another man near the front door was positioned where he could see anyone entering or leaving. What happens to the money you stole? We'll make restitution, full repayment, plus interest. And the stolen files from my company? Destroyed, like they never existed. It was a reasonable offer, if you ignored the months of systematic fraud and the fact that they'd been planning to frame me for their crimes. I need time to think about it. You don't have time. Lance wants an answer tonight. Then Lance is going to be disappointed. I stood up and dropped money on the table for my untouched drink. As I walked toward the door, I could feel the men at the bar preparing to follow me. Outside, I turned left and walked quickly toward the parking garage where I'd left my car. The footsteps behind me confirmed that Seren's warning about Lance being dangerous wasn't just empty threats. I reached my car and started the engine, then called Sarah's number. I'm being followed. 3 men. possibly armed. Where are you? Downtown parking garage, 5th and Main. Stay in your car. Help is coming. I pulled out of the parking garage and into traffic, watching my mirrors carefully. The men following me had split up. One was in a dark sedan behind me. Another was paralleling my route on a cross street. My phone rang. Lance's voice was calm and friendly, which somehow made it more threatening. Brooks, I think we got off on the wrong foot earlier. What do you want, Lance? I want to offer you a deal, a very generous deal. I'm listening. $1 million cash for you to disappear, take a vacation, start over somewhere else, forget this whole mess ever happened. And if I don't, then you're going to have a very unpleasant evening. I looked in my rearview mirror. The sedan was getting closer, and I could see the passenger reaching for something under his jacket. Lance, if anything happens to me, everything I know goes public. Federal investigators, media outlets, social media, the whole package. That's a risk I'm willing to take. The line went quiet, and I realized that Lance had moved beyond rational calculation. He wasn't trying to solve a problem anymore. He was trying to eliminate a threat. I took a hard right turn into an alley, then another right into a construction zone where I'd been working the previous month. The narrow streets and heavy equipment would make it difficult for the sedan to follow. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Back up en route. Keep moving. I drove through the construction zone, using my knowledge of the site layout to stay ahead of my pursuers. Behind me, I could hear car doors slamming and men shouting instructions to each other. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop, the sound of gunshots echoing off the concrete walls of the construction site. This had gone far beyond financial fraud and marital infidelity. Lance was willing to commit murder to protect his secrets, which meant that everything Mina and I had planned was about to become much more dangerous. But it also meant that Lance had just made the kind of mistake that desperate people always make. He'd escalated to a level where there was no going back. Tomorrow night's meeting with Mina's mysterious client couldn't come soon enough. I spent the night in a safe house that Sarah's team had arranged, a nondescript apartment in a part of town where Lance's people were unlikely to look. By morning, the news was reporting that federal investigators had raided both Lance's office and Seren's workplace, seizing computers and financial records. The net was closing, but Lance was still dangerous. Mina called at noon with an update. Lance has been arrested on federal charges, wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, the works. His bail hearing is this afternoon, but with the flight risk and the threats against you, he's likely to be held without bond. What about Seren? Arrested this morning at her apartment. Apparently, she tried to destroy evidence when she saw the news about Lance, but the FBI was already watching her. I felt a mixture of relief and something else. Not quite satisfaction, but a sense that balance was being restored. So it's over? The legal part is just beginning. But the immediate threat is neutralized. Lance can't hurt you from federal custody. That evening, Mina picked me up for the meeting with her mysterious client. We drove to an upscale restaurant in the financial district, the kind of place where powerful people made deals that shaped the city's future. Before we go in, Mina said, I should prepare you for who you're about to meet. Finally ready to tell me? Lance Greer's wife, Margaret Greer. I stared at her. His wife hired you to investigate her own husband? She's known about his affairs for years, but when she found out he was planning to leave her for your wife, she decided to take action. So, this whole thing was a woman protecting her interests while helping you protect yours. Margaret has been planning Lance's downfall for months. You just gave her the perfect opportunity to execute it. The restaurant was elegant in an understated way, the kind of place where the real power brokers came to avoid attention. Margaret Greer was waiting at a corner table, and she was nothing like what I'd expected. She was probably in her early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of understated elegance that came from old money. But her eyes were sharp and calculating, and when she smiled at me, I could see the steel beneath the refined exterior. Mr. Carven, I'm so pleased to finally meet you. Mrs. Greer, I understand I have you to thank for recent developments. We helped each other. Lance was planning to destroy both of our lives. It seemed logical to work together to prevent that. She gestured for me to sit, and a waiter immediately appeared with drinks that had apparently been pre-ordered. I want you to know that I never intended for things to escalate to violence, Margaret continued. Lance's threats against you were unexpected, but not entirely surprising. My husband has always been ruthless in business. I suppose I shouldn't be shocked that he brought those same tactics to his personal life. Margaret pulled a folder from her purse and set it on the table between us. These are the financial documents that will ensure Lance and your wife serve significant prison time. Bank records, communication logs, evidence of money laundering, everything the prosecutors need for a conviction. I opened the folder and found documentation that went far beyond what Mina and I had gathered. This was the work of someone who'd been planning for months, maybe years. How long have you been preparing for this? Since I first discovered Lance's affairs 3 years ago. I've been documenting everything, building a case, waiting for the right moment to act. And I provided that moment? You provided the perfect catalyst, a sympathetic victim, clear evidence of fraud, media attention that would make it impossible for Lance to buy his way out of trouble. Margaret leaned forward, her voice becoming more personal. I want you to understand something, Mr. Carven. What Lance and your wife did to you was unconscionable, but what they were planning to do to me was worse. She pulled out another document, divorce papers that mirrored the ones I'd found in Lance's safe, except these would have left Margaret with almost nothing despite 30 years of marriage. Lance was planning to claim that I'd been stealing from his business accounts, frame me for embezzlement, destroy my reputation, leave me penniless and facing criminal charges. I studied the forged documents, seeing the same systematic cruelty that Lance and Seren had planned for me. So, you decided to strike first. I decided to protect myself using the same weapons he planned to use against me: information, evidence, and the legal system. The waiter brought our dinner, and we ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Finally, Margaret spoke again. There's one more thing you should know about your wife. What about her? The affair with Lance wasn't her first, or her second. Mina's investigation uncovered at least 4 other relationships over the past 2 years. Margaret handed me a USB drive. Financial records, hotel receipts, communications, everything you need to understand the full scope of what she's been doing. I pocketed the drive without looking at it. Somehow, learning that Seren's betrayal was even more extensive than I'd known didn't make me feel worse. If anything, it confirmed that the woman I'd married had never really existed. What happens now? Now. Lance and Seren face federal charges that will likely result in significant prison time. Their assets will be frozen and eventually seized. Their reputations will never recover. And us? You'll rebuild your life with the knowledge that you fought back against people who tried to destroy you. I'll divorce Lance while he's in federal prison and move on with my life. Margaret raised her wine glass in a toast. To justice, Mr. Carven, and to the satisfaction of watching bad people face consequences for their actions. I raised my glass and met her eyes. To justice. As we finished dinner, Margaret handed me one final envelope. What's this? A check for the money Lance and Seren stole from you, plus interest and damages. Consider it restitution. I opened the envelope and found a check for more money than I'd made in the past 2 years. I can't accept this. You can and you will. Lance stole your money to fund his affair with your wife. I'm returning it with money from the same accounts he used to betray both of us. Outside the restaurant, Margaret shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who'd spent her life in boardrooms and charity committees. It's been a pleasure working with you, Mr. Carven. I hope you use this experience to build something better. What will you do now? What I should have done years ago. Live my life on my own terms, without worrying about what Lance might do to sabotage it. She walked away into the night, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with a check that would change my life and a sense that justice had been served in the most comprehensive way possible. 6 months later, I was sitting in Meridian's restaurant, the same place where this whole story had started. Sophie was still working there, and she'd been promoted to assistant manager after the previous manager retired. "The usual?" she asked as I sat down at my regular table. "Please. And Sophie? Thank you. For everything." "For what?" "For telling me the truth when I needed to hear it. For treating people with dignity even when they don't deserve it. For being decent in a world where that's apparently rare." She smiled and brought me my dinner. As I ate, I thought about the past 6 months. Lance had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Seren had received 5 years and was already serving her time. Both of them had lost everything: their money, their reputations, their freedom. I'd used Margaret's check to start my own engineering firm, and business was good. Better than good, actually. Apparently, being known as someone who fights back against corruption was excellent for attracting clients who valued integrity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about your new company. Congratulations. You deserve success after everything you've been through." I didn't recognize the number, but something about the tone reminded me of Margaret Greer. I typed back, "Thank you. I hope you're doing well." The response came immediately. "Better than well. Living my best life. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let bad people win." I finished my dinner and left a generous tip for Sophie. As I walked out into the night air, I realized that Margaret was right. The best revenge wasn't destroying Lance and Seren, though that had been satisfying in its own way. The best revenge was building something better from the wreckage of what they'd tried to destroy. I drove home through streets that felt familiar and welcoming for the first time in years, knowing that I'd learned something valuable about myself. When pushed far enough, I was willing to fight back. And when I fought back, I fought to win. Some people might call that revenge. I preferred to think of it as justice with a personal touch. Either way, it felt good to be the one walking away victorious.